Hey friends, and welcome to a series we're calling Locals Who Lead. I'm Tom Wheeler, your host today for our podcast for XOXO Boise, and I have the infamous Reverend Josh Lee. Tell the folks watching who you are. Who's Josh Lee?
Existential question right out of the gate. Gut punch. Josh Lee. I am born and raised in Chicago, spent some time pastoring a church in New York City, and then my husband was like, I think we're mid-sized city people. Let's move to Boise. And so now I live here pastoring a church and building community.
Okay, so before you came in here, I was telling someone who walked past the office that I was getting ready to interview a gay pastor, reverend from New York. So you're a gay reverend,
yes,
living in Boise, having relocated from New York. But how did you find yourself in this role of leading churches?
Yeah. Well, I was like super young, like 5 years old. I'd come home from church and I would like sit my grandma down on the couch and I would preach to her whatever like 5-year-old, 7-year-old truths I had taken from the sermon that day. And so my grandma would always be like, Josh, you're going to totally be a pastor one day.
And then you were sharing when we've chatted in the past too about the struggles of dealing with your sexuality and faith and the intersectionality of those two things. What can you speak to about that?
Yeah, so like when I was a freshman in high school, my mom found out I was gay because my best friend told her. And so my mom was kind of like, oh, this is like not congruent with our faith. It's not congruent with like your career path. Like, let's have you go to some programs. So I ended up going to reparative therapy programs to try to, or conversion therapy, often known as that, to try to change my sexuality. So I did that throughout high school, and then in college, I realized those programs didn't work. So then I committed to lifelong singleness and celibacy, and I did it faithfully without error for 5 years. And then in 2015, I discovered that there were churches that accepted gay pastors, that did gay weddings, and I was like 23 at the time and had never heard of that world. And so I started like immersing myself in it, and after some time I accepted my sexuality and came out and started dating men and all the other things, and it's been lovely.
And you shared that your husband was like, maybe Idaho.
Yes.
But tell us about your experience, like when you first got to Boise. What were your first impressions? What were some things that you heard about Boise that you're like, oh, is that, or maybe Idaho? Like what was that all like before you made the move?
Yeah, so I had never been to Boise when my husband suggested we move here. And so I was like, what, why? I just knew like Idaho, I just assumed like rural, conservative, like not a lot of gays.
Yeah.
And so my husband was like, no, let me tell you, I've been researching. So, he basically like spent this whole like 30-minute explanation of like giving me statistics, telling me about the vibe, showing me pictures. Like he had done a deep dive. He knew he was gonna have to convince me. And so I was like, well, let me look and see if there's even a gay affirming church in Boise. And so that would hire a gay pastor. So I did find a church and I was like, I'll apply and see what happens. And I applied and they interviewed and we flew out here and had the opportunity to meet you. And you showed us around. And honestly, a lot of the ideas that I had about Boise, you were able to sort of like kind of push against that and be like, actually, no, let me show you this. Let me show you that. That actually is a very progressive place. And there's a lot of great places to eat. And the housing actually is lovely. And like you can get a lot more bang for your buck than you got for in Brooklyn, New York.
What an experience. Well, and I think that's one thing that we aim to do at Homefound is like sort of demystify all the bad headlines that come out of the States, like Boise and surrounding areas. There's good community. Yeah. And it's because of Homefound heroes like you, Josh. Oh. XOXO Boise, subscribe now.
But I do feel like, you also inspired me because I'm somebody that really likes to like advocate and fight for equal rights and just in full inclusion. And that's something, obviously part of my work as a pastor, but just you sharing about what you do with Canyon County Pride here, bringing pride to that county for the first time, like that it really shook things up. Like to me, that inspired me because it was like, oh, there's a need here. They need LGBTQ people to come and like create greater awareness, and not necessarily because the people that live here don't already doing great work or whatever, but like people who live here are exhausted and they're tired and they've done so much and they do need the second line of support to come in and to provide that,
Well, that's what's so cool about this work is when we get connected with folks who are moving from out of state and they connect with us because they really align with our mission, our vision, our values, and there's a million realtors out there. So being aligned with someone who is going to share your values is important. And it was so cool that like, I think within you hadn't even lived here a month and you were testifying in front of the state house. Like, what can you share about that?
I mean, we moved here the last week of December, and so the legislature, they opened their doors on January 2nd, and the very first piece of legislation they put forward was this marriage memorial to get gay marriage overturned. And I just was it really caught me off guard. I'm like, where did my husband bring me? Top priority for them is like, let's get the Supreme Court to turn this back to the states so that each state can decide if gay marriage will be legal.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the world? So I spent a lot of time with the legislature lobbying for different things, both in Illinois and in New York, but never gay rights because they're very progressive states.
Okay, because the states you were in, you weren't.
I didn't need to fight for that. It was just like a given. So I fought for other people groups, right? But now all of a sudden they come here and I'm like, oh, like, okay, I'm like my people group. Like I either fight for my own rights. Yeah. And so I just felt like, my congregation's the first congregation in Idaho to become gay affirming, and that was in 1990. Wow. And I really felt like I needed to live into their legacy as well as fight for my own rights, and like show up and say, hey, I'm a religious person, and I actually have a different view than some of the other religious conservative people here that think this is wrong. Because I think sometimes the only religious voice that's heard is the conservative, right?
Right, especially now.
For sure. And so I'm like, it's also my religious liberty and my right to be able to marry and be married to whomever I want.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about religious rights here, like, I'll claim my religious rights too.
So tell me a little bit about what it's been like since you've moved here and being part of the community.
Yeah, I feel like finding friends here, as long as you're intentional, like it's very possible. That's how making friends as an adult is, period. You have to be intentional. It's not just gonna happen for you.
Which is something that I think people underestimate.
Right.
Like adulting and having friends is actually very challenging. Like
yes.
When you're in like grade school, you're forced to like make friends.
That's right.
You get into adulthood and you're like, hey, you want to grab a drink after work?
Right. Which maybe you don't even want to be friends with people at work because like it's messy and complicated too, right? Yeah. So like you have to be intentional to go out and like find spaces and places to like build friendships and relationships. So that was very important to me, was that like I found relationships and connections outside of my work and outside of just my husband. And so yeah, I feel like there's just presented a lot of different opportunities over the last couple of months for us, like just be in spaces. And my husband being an introvert is like, oh my God, you're taking me to another thing. another thing. And I'm like, babe, like we're here. This is the beginning. When you meet people and they invite you, you have to say yes right away. Because if you say no, they'll be like, oh, they're not interested in hanging out. And they may never ask us to hang out again, right?
That's happened to me. What are some of the coolest things you're working on right now? Because you stay very busy. I mean, you're pastoring Boise's first progressive congregation.
Yeah.
Is it Idaho's or Boise's?
It was Idaho's first affirming LGBTQ congregation. Yeah.
Okay, so that you're wearing those shoes.
Yeah.
And obviously all the advocacy roles, in the state house. But what are some of the coolest things you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, one of the things my church is really passionate about is, it's called Interfaith Sanctuary, which houses folks who are experiencing homelessness here. Mm-hmm. And where they're currently at, their current facilities is in downtown, and it's just really not conducive for the city, not conducive for its neighbors, not conducive for the people who are living there. And so they just built and are preparing to open a new location in Boise that will be an all-day housing, so folks can actually be housed all day and not like just at night and then they're just living on the streets during the day. And so it provides a lot more permanent housing, transitional housing. And so unfortunately though, there's been a lot of resistance in our state legislature. And so they just recently passed a law that makes it illegal to sleep in your car or sleep on public property. So if you're sleeping on a bench or in a park, you get a ticket or be arrested, which obviously just exasperates the issues. And so one of the things we're really just trying to put our energy towards is like, how can we create safe housing, safe places, even shelter for people to be, so that they're not like getting arrested or ticketed for being homeless. The other big thing is I've only been at my church for 4 months. So I'm like having a million coffee dates, getting to know everybody, hearing their stories.
That's one of the jobs of the pastor role is know everyone in the church.
Absolutely. I mean, in any institution you lead, the best thing you can ever do is like get to know the stories of the people you're serving, your coworkers, right? Like the institutional history. You don't just want to come in and be like, I'm going to change all this, I'm going to do all this, without having built relational capital and to know the system that you're walking into, and that like this church has been around for 134 years.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot to learn about who they are and who they want to be. Yeah, they can teach me, and then I can also teach them about, well, here's where I can see us going based on where we've been. But I got to learn where we've been in order to figure out where we're going.
One of the things that we're excited to work with you on is our interfaith service for Canyon County Pride. So Sunday, June 8th at Lakeview Park, we really had this idea to speaking to that intersectionality of being a part of the LGBTQ community and having a faith experience, and how troubled that can be for folks more often than not, especially for folks in the LGBTQ community. We really wanted to have what I'm calling gay church, but I realize that's not the inclusive terminology.
Sure. But it's cheeky and it's fun.
In my mind, I just envision just anything LGBTQ with like church and wigs and music and all things.
Clear church, right?
Or where are we at with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me personally, I think that before I was 23, if I had showed up at a Pride and I had seen an interfaith service, it could have changed my life. Because I did not know that gay affirming churches existed prior to 23 years old. You know, I stumbled upon it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that we're starting Pride with that, for a county that is incredibly churchy and Christian, I think that it's a statement, because it may expose people to recognize there are actually churches in Canyon County that are gay affirming, that will embrace them and accept them and welcome them if that's something that they want to be a part of, if faith is something that they want. Recognizing that we can celebrate who we are, right? I think that's what Pride's all about, right?
Period.
Religious traditions have taught gay people, you need to be ashamed of yourself. So that's why we have Pride, to teach people no, you should be proud of yourself.
Period. That's why they call it Pride.
That's why they call it Pride. It's literally right. Some people are like, oh, it's not good to be arrogant. Why would you want to promote being arrogant? You know, it's not about that. It's literally about disarming and dislodging what we've been taught to be ashamed of ourselves. So what better way to start Pride than a celebratory interfaith service where we can disarm shame and say, no, let's celebrate who you are. God made you in that way, and it's beautiful.
And to the MAGAs who will be there at Gay Church Sunday morning, June 8th at Lakeview Park.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed the service.
Oh, yes.
And there'll be a good drag show afterwards. Well, this is amazing. We could talk forever. But before we wrap up, we have a little tradition we love around here.
Hopefully.
Each guest is going to leave behind a mystery question for the next guest. So it's kind of this spirit of connecting. And so I'm going to give you this little pen and paper here.
Okay.
You can think about it, but just write a question that you would be interested in hearing the next guest, who you don't know who it will be, what you have in mind. Anything you're curious to ask a fellow dreamer, doer, creator, or neighbor.
My specific question is I'm more of a religious question. What do you love and what do you hate most about church?
Ooh.
I kind of would love that, because it's insightful for me to know that too from random
and
person.
It's so informative of who you are as a guest.
Because also the next guest will not expect that question.
Here's another game we're going to play on every episode of the Locals Who Lead series. We're going to play a game where we ask our fellow podcaster guests a question on how they would pronounce a street name here in the state of Idaho. And we don't know the correct answer, so it's totally... So we're going to have you see how you would pronounce this street name.
Chinden.
Reverend Josh Lee is going to say Chinden.
Okay.
So I'd be curious for the folks who live here, would they say Chinden? Because we've also heard Chinden.
Oh my, okay.
Okay, here's another one.
Kutuni?
Well, I wonder if this is Native American. It's probably is.
Yeah, now I feel bad. Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, it's okay.
We won't give you a bad ad.
Okay, thank you.
But
I'm going to cancel.
We've heard people say this Kootenai. We've also heard Kootenai.
Oh.
Okay, here's another one for you.
Risuji? I feel good about Risuji.
We pronounce as residue. Boise was discovered by a French colonist, I believe. Fact check me. I mean, do we do that anymore?
Yeah, we should keep doing that.
So residue.
I can see that.
Residue-y.
Yep.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Here's another one for you.
Latea.
Girl, you're trying to make these as extra as you can.
How else would you say that? Latea.
Where's the A at the end?
You're right. I was doing
Sound it out.
The A at the end, Latea.
Girl.
It's Latea. What is it really?
I think, this is giving me Lata vibes. Sounds like maybe that could be your drag name.
Honestly, I see it. That's what's a
Okay. And then we have the city.
Kuna, for sure.
Kuna, okay. So I've heard this one also be referenced as Kuna.
Oh.
But
okay.
Kuna works too.
All right. Now here's my question for you. Is it Boise or is it Boise?
Well, you will be clocked if you make the S a Z. I learned this very early on when I moved here, was that if you say Boise, they'll say, okay, well, you're clearly not from here.
Yeah.
So you have to really pronounce the S.
The S.
Boise.
Boise.
Which is why you see shirts that say like B-O-I-S-E-E.
Yeah.
Boise. So thanks so much, Josh, for being here on this episode. Here's to leaders who lead with love and the neighbors who notice. Keep finding each other. I'm Tom Wheeler. And this is Reverend Josh Lee. It's been a pleasure to have you on Locals Who Lead, part of the XOXO Boise series. See you next time.